All right, good people. Welcome to the Mr. Preacher podcast. I'm the teacher, Jake's the preacher. We are here to learn what lasts in athletics and teach and preach it back to you, the athlete, coach, and parent. And we are navigating our final deep read of the month of enthusiasm. We are in the time capsule of July. No, it was July. It is now August, but kind of that between period. It was both mainly July of 2023 when this recording happened. And we're studying enthusiasm. We already studied the industriousness building block of John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. We're going one by one, month by month, reading good books, whether they're old or new, and applying them to the sports world to see what we can see. What do we know 75 years later after this pyramid had been recorded from one of the greatest coaches of all time? And see if we can learn anything, take it away, and move from there. Today's book is SuperBetter, The Power of Living Gamefully by Jane McGonigal. I am super excited for this. I'd probably say that about every book, but I'm a book guy, so it'll be really fun. And we'll get into the structure of that and play along. But before we get to that, go get your book. If you listen along, you're like, hey, that sounds interesting. I want to learn and read more. One of the greatest side effects of this channel is hopefully to get you to read. Reading is definitely a superpower. It's two things I really took away is one is you are only as good as the people you meet and the books you read. It's a really good line. And as you grow, whether you are a teenager or you're just starting your coaching life, or even if you've been coaching or parenting for a while, reading is some of the best ROI you can get. So if you want SuperBetter, go to bookshop.org. That is our underdogs of the book selling world. They support independent booksellers throughout the nation. And you can know that your money is going to a good spot if it makes no difference to you where you get your books from. So go to bookshop.org, get SuperBetter, get any of the books that we have covered. We have organized those by topic. So there's an industriousness one, there's an enthusiasm. We'll have videos that have all of that ready to go, but in the link below, we'll just have the SuperBetter one for you. So do check that out. Go to bookshop.org or wherever you get your books. Jake, are you ready to get a little, not just better,
super better?
All right.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
Now, I want to focus the reader, get our listeners engaged. We are going to play a game. So this is a gameful approach to life. Gameful, not gamify. Jane would take offense to that maybe. But I want to play with purpose. So this is a quest. We're going to get into what that means later in kind of the middle of the book. And the idea is that games really enrich what we do and who we are and the strengths we present during a game can be applied to real life, more or less what it means to be gameful. So I want to play with the purpose with you. So we're going to go back to elementary, middle school, high school. You can pick your time period, but I really want to focus on the game. So this is the quest, number 14 in the book. It's called Play with a Purpose. So playing with a purpose, with greater purpose is easy. You just have to follow 3 simple steps. So this will get us in that gameful, gamified, and start to think about games. So number 1, Jake, choose a game. Name a game that you played often. And what I want to say is often. So thinking of like your top 3 to 5 games that you played a ton, that you obsessed over even. What was one or a couple of those games, and we'll pick one.
Do video games count?
Yes, absolutely. Let's go. I would actually prefer video games at this point for this book.
Okay, sounds good. Madden 2004.
Who's on the cover of that?
Michael Vick.
Michael Vick. Okay.
Then we go Triple Play 2001. These are
good games.
My most played games here that I'm running through. And then MLB The Show 2010.
Okay. I actually really, knowing you, I want to go with the first. Madden 04. Okay. So our goal with this, playing with the purpose, is we're going to find the benefit. And one of the things I do in another world, in another context, is if you tell me the game you play and you tell me the benefit, I can deconstruct, because the way I play, like Madden 04, for instance, the way Kurt, my twin, Kurt, plays is way different, and the way you played is far different. Now, we still are playing the same game, right? But what it tells us is a lot about ourselves. So I'm going to read it. It's number 2 is find the benefit. So what's one benefit you think you got from playing Madden 04? It might be a skill or a talent or a positive change in how you feel, think, or interact with others. So how did you play Madden, and what do you think it made you good at?
That game specifically, 2 things jump out. The first one is they had create your own plays and your own playbook. So I spent a lot of time on that. It was pretty customizable. You made your own routes. You had the alignment block how you wanted. And so I had some pretty creative things going on. So there's a lot of problem solving. There was a lot of creativity that was allowed to come out in that game that I really enjoyed. That feature right there was the number one reason that was the game that came to my head first. And then I would say it's with all 3. But for me, they were games that were always really fun to play with other people in the same room as you. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference that I think gaming today is just completely blown out of the water. Like, most games don't even have that feature option where you could actually play with somebody else in the same room. I grew up with that. Mm-hmm. And so that social connection, not through a screen, but actually next to each other, playing that game was always a blast. Because, I designed these plays, and then I'd have other people that I'm playing with on the same team actually doing the play that I created. And so if they didn't do it, like, I had ownership of actually doing my play. This is how it's supposed to work, and you screw it up every time. So there was that fun social dynamic with that too.
I would love to paint a better picture before we finish this. Okay, so you have to understand, like, you don't always, I didn't live next door to Jake. Like, you had to drive like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how fast you drove, if your mom or dad drove you. Jake didn't make like normal plays. Like, we're talking weird formations, odd, like what I distinctly remember is I couldn't run his plays. So like, there was a specific thing that had to happen, and it was like an automatic touchdown. Like, hey, if you do A, B, C, D, E, then you go for 65 yards. You go, okay, you got to wait for the 2 pulling guards, and then they're just going to clear, like, just wait for it. And then they like clear everybody out of the way. I'm like, good God. Like, so like, they were weird formations, always home runs. And just like, I could never get them right. Like, that was my thing. Like, maybe I was just frustrated. I was never mad at the play. I was just like, I can never run these right. But there was never an element of it was like straightforward. It was I wonder if, and a lot of times I think you were the Eagles quite a bit. It was distinctly for that team. So like, Kurt played that a little bit. Like, he liked his teams to look a certain way, and then he designed his plays around it. I didn't get into the playbook as much. I was more of a roster fiend. I love to have unique opposite rosters, because Jake played a certain way, Kurt played a certain way, other friends played a certain way. And when I love to be able to control the game. Like, I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to have a really good defense. There will be 3 fullbacks in the game. I will find the 3 fullbacks in the league, maybe double tight ends. We're just going to wing tee this, like, in every down. Like, I'm willing to punt even just to drag this game down. Like, and people hated me for it, but it was great. So I
think that's a great way to show the difference is,
yes.
I would make a team, and all my plays were surrounded. I would get Michael Bennett, who was a former running back, track star at Wisconsin, who had like a 99 speed rating in Madden. And then I had Michael Vick as my quarterback, who had, I don't know, a 90 speed rating as a quarterback, which is through the roof. And then I'd come up with all these plays, right? But it was just to get the ball to fast people. And Kevin would build a team with 3 fullbacks and 9 tight ends, and I don't know that they even had a quarterback. I think it was just all guards, centers, tackles, and fullbacks. That was the entire team.
You don't need
it. Hut and mush. That's what he played. So just the complete.
And when in doubt, my quarterback just needs to be able to throw a post route left or right to the tight end. That's it. That's the only play action. So gotta play to your strength. So let's wrap this. So the final thing to play with the purpose. So we have Madden 04, the way you played. So now let's connect it to a greater purpose. So what real life goal? So now you're getting out of the games, like you played the video game, now we're in real life. Or what situation in your daily life could this benefit like the ability to problem solve, create a playbook, teach other people, help you deal with more effectively? So how has that transferred to real life? That's just a fancy way of saying that. Have you seen the problem solving, playbooking, either at that time or even down the road? Like you approach a problem and you're like, oh, this is just like Madden 04.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the number one thing it's probably done is it's helped me understand me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, oh, that's how I approach something. That's my strength. I like to be creative. I like to find things outside of the box. And that has carried over in life by like, okay, there is a general fear when you are presenting something or saying something that's outside of the box to somebody. There's a little apprehension to it, right? Like, well, are they going to think this idea is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? And
good reference.
I have just come to the conclusion that's who I am. And if I'm around people that don't appreciate that, then I'm not going to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have to understand that there are some people that just don't appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helped me relate to people in different ways. It's also helped me kind of take down the walls of protection that I might otherwise put up when I'm presenting crazy ideas. Hey, what if we did it this way? This seems preposterous. Okay. Sounds good. I tried. I'm still being me, and you're still okay with me being me. So we're gonna keep going on.
Yeah. Well, and that's all right. And it's you know what? Everybody has to be known for something, right? I mean, you cannot just. I mean, it's nice to be the Swiss Army knife and have be a well-rounded player. Like you have multi-tools, 5-tool baseball player. But the reality is, most people are terrible at most things and good at maybe a couple, right? I mean, we have strengths. But that's good. Like I would love that niche of like, if I want something that's out of the box, I'm going to Jake. Like that is a great compliment, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I want something to get done, I'm going to go to blank. If I want it to look this way, I'm going to go to so-and-so. Like, and I think you need all of it, right? The lateralization is probably your strength. It's like grab something from a whole nother field and you apply it here and you're like, I wonder if this works.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to tell you, like maybe it was, so I got to go back to the comment. So this is the obsession, because I don't think we have really truly clarified the obsession of the playbook. You would go home after whatever plays he made, lose, right? Because I can't stop Michael Bennett or Michael Vick again. This is why I drag out the time people, because if I have the ball, it means he doesn't have the ball. You would go home and you maybe like a week later, 2 weeks, whatever, he'd come back and you'd be like, oh my God, have you been doing this like all day, every day since I've seen you? Because you'd see the result, but the amount of plays, the complexity, and then the just oh my God factor. You're like, oh good grief. And then we'd catch up on that, and then we'd get told to go outside. You go outside, and then you come back, and then you learn the rest of it, and then you get crushed. But you'd be like 17-0, and it was like, wow, okay. So
yeah, it's again, learn something about myself. I am obsessive like that.
Yep.
If I get hooked on, if something clicks in my brain, like I want to figure that out, or it's done. It's gonna go. I'm curious if it's a male thing in general, because I know it's personified in a lot of movies where men devote so strongly to something, whether it's an invention or whatever. But that's how it was with me. And I got stuck on Madden 2004 playbooks, man. And I would just go home and I would play around. I would try putting people everywhere I could and see if the game would let me. I would pull the entire offensive line one direction with everybody else on the other side of the field. Just
see what I mean?
I would try put many running backs on the field as I could. I tried putting as many wide receivers, never as many fullbacks like you, but yeah, it was always a good time. And then you'd come over and try running my plays and do it completely wrong, and then we'd get mad at you. And
yep.
It was a never-ending cycle, but we loved the crap out of it.
Exactly. And so if you're playing along with us, like you could pick any game that you played a lot. Like it has to be one you've devoted time and attention to. And then if you can deconstruct that, that is one of the best places to start for hobbies, careers, everything. If you can recreate like your job, like when you wake up in the morning, you're like, hey, I'm going to go play Madden 04 today. Now you're still not playing Madden 04, but if it shares similarities to that and you can approach it with that mindset, as we're going to see, that's a good place to start. It's way better than how much money can I make or any other extrinsic motivator. So let's transition with that. That's a good thing to do. So what we were just talking about was what Jane McGonigal in SuperBetter calls being gameful. And being gameful means, in 2 quotes, bringing the psychological strengths you naturally display when you play games to real life. It's strengths and skills you develop during gameplay, and then you apply them to real life goals and challenges. So it's literally what I call a copy paste. How can I recreate that context as identically as possible? Because it's a system you fired over and over. That is what we're talking about with gameplay. Now, I told Jake before we started recording, I'm not going to rehash the science around games. If you want to do that, go check out Jane's TED Talks. Grab her book, Reality is Broken. That's her first book, deep book on games. And then SuperBetter is more of the structure that came out of her insight. I don't want to rehash her stuff in that regard because frankly, it's overwhelming. Like the amount of literature on the benefits of games. And when I say games, I mean games of all kinds, but Jane really focuses on video games, is just too much. So what I'd like to do for us, like, we're studying enthusiasm. How do we be more enthusiastic? Well, I do want to shock you a little bit, surprise you with some of the highlights from SuperBetter. We'll do that in our first draft reading. So instead of giving you a summary of it, you can do that on your own. Let's go through some of these highlights about games. And then when we get to the second draft, we'll play SuperBetter. We'll go through each of the rules. I'll use Jake as the model, and you can see what it would look like to structure this. Because the goal of this is like, games are great. They have benefits. You could take them and apply this mindset to your craft, whether you're a coach, athlete, or parent. And then we'll give you the language and the structure of SuperBetter. You could start playing. So we'll model that for you. That's kind of where we're going to head here. So, sound good?
Groovy.
All right. So first draft reading, the first big section of the book, Jane does make the case for why do games make us super better. And some of the facts that she points out at the beginning are you're stronger than you know. You're surrounded by potential allies. You are the hero of your own story. And she mentions some very succinct and simple benefits of games at multiple points throughout the book. But I want to read some of them. This is kind of the promise she makes at the beginning of the book. And we'll go into the kind of big surprises here. Games increase your motivation and willpower. They literally block the feeling of physical pain more powerfully than morphine. We're going to come back to that. Help you overcome anxiety, depression. They make you a better learner, inspire you to exercise more, prevent post-traumatic stress disorder. I know the mental health wave in youth sports is a big deal. Make you more likely to come to a stranger's rescue and forge stronger, happier relationships with friends and family. And Jake, remind me later if I don't make a point about the in-person versus digital.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So Jake, here's what the game is. I am going to go throughout the book and I'm going to read just something of note. Usually these are very specific details or like applications of games. And what I'm going to ask you is from 1 to 10, how surprising is that to you? You know, as a gamer, you and I grew up where we had the kind of a really good balance of video games and real games. Like it was back and forth. I think we had a pretty good 50-50 approach and we lean one way or the other every so often. But our parents were very good about that. Like, play a little bit of games, go outside.
Yep.
So kind of give me 1 to 10. 10 being like, wow, I'd never heard of that before. That blows my mind. 1 being like, yeah, I kind of figured. Okay.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Csikszentmihalyi, our dear friend, the godfather of flow. We do miss him in this world. Csikszentmihalyi, this is the fact. 2 facts. Moreover, Csikszentmihalyi, first wrote about the phenomenon of flow, okay? He said he identified games and play as the quintessential flow activity, because flow is that state where we're fully absorbed in the present moment and we get engaged. But that is not the fact I want to ask you about. It is flow is the reason that games, more than any other activity, are uniquely able to help us exert more control over anxiety and many other emotions as well. Video games, Jake, this is it, are such a reliable and efficient way to reach a flow state. In fact, that when scientists want to study the phenomenon of flow in a laboratory, they typically have participants play video games. No activity, bombshell, that we know of creates flow more quickly for as many people as digital games. How surprising is that to you?
I mean, no activity is a big statement for sure. I'm gonna go more on the side of, I'm gonna say a 4.
Okay.
Because of how engaged people get with games. Like I can see that. There's this real cultural phenomenon around games where people, kids are getting in, not just kids, adults too, get engaged on such a strong level. Like there's such a strong connection with these games. I'm gonna go with 4.
Okay. Let's call this a SuperBetter surprise scale. There we go. There's a game name. Fun frame. All right, so the first one was flow. That was a 4. Next one is the recipe. So this is, I'm more or less looking for the surprise around the amount, okay? Because we hear a lot about how much video games. So in the You Are Stronger Than You Know chapter, it said in a trial, so they're doing a study, the researchers studied the impact of 30 minutes of gameplay 3 times a week on reported mood, as well as the same EEG and heart rate variability measured. Participants were all suffering from anxiety, depression, or both at the start of the study. And after 1 month at the 3 times a week for 30 minutes of gameplay, so 3 times 30 minutes, yep. They saw significant reductions in depression, anxiety, and general stress levels. So after 1 month of that intervention, we know that. How surprising is that to you?
So essentially 90 minutes a month.
90 minutes
No,
a week.
A week.
Yeah.
3 times a week for 30 minutes for 1 month.
Correct.
I'm gonna go with an 8.
It seems like it should be, it seems so small.
Yep, completely agree.
I don't
completely agree. Especially with how fast time ends up going when you're playing a game. I've done it so many times in my life where I just get enthralled in a game, and next thing I know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. What the heck happened? It felt like it was 20 minutes. So yeah, I'm surprised by how little time that would take.
I wonder, like I'll admit that I'm not Jane and I don't have time to read all the studies like she has. That's why she's Jane, for the record.
And you're Tarzan.
I'm Tarzan. Yeah. I would love to know if that same amount, like anytime throughout the month. I like the consistency of the study, but I would love to know like what the sheer number of minutes, but I'll leave that be. That's my puzzle to solve. All right, next one. We're going to talk about the linkages. So this is the in-person gaming. So I'm going to read the end statement and then I'm going to come backwards. Just how surprising this. It says, in the research, any game played simultaneously by 2 people in the same physical location, okay, like you said, creates this kind of mind meld and body synchronization, laying the foundation for a more powerful and positive relationship after the game is over. So I'm going to circle back. So these researchers played a game, I don't even know what it is, called Hedge Wars. I can't pronounce their names. I am sorry. They're hard. But they talked about neurological and physiological linkage. It's when 2 players start to make the same facial expressions, smiling and frowning in unison. Their heart rates adapt to the same rhythm. Their breathing patterns sync. Most astonishingly, this is my one that I had to say, the brainwaves sync as their neurons start to mirror each other, a process that helps them anticipate what the other will do next. So you have this like unconscious anticipatory set. Like, if I do this, I think Jake's going to do that. All of these changes happen almost immediately within minutes of starting play. Surprisingly, this synchronization occurs whether the two players are, there's multiple shocking parts to this, whether the two players are cooperating, like we're on the same team, or competing with each other. There are 4 types of synchronization: facial expression, heart rate, respiration, and neuroactivity, and they're strongly linked. Here's one of my biggest things that I've seen is probably to your point. They're strongly increased and correlated with empathy and social bonding. The more we sync up with someone, the more we like them, and the more likely we are to help them in the future. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have a low degree of empathy and emotional bandwidth and bonding, is that just people are not in the same room. But what do you think of any of that? You can surprise me with multiple numbers, but what do you think about the linkages, the synchronization of in-person play together?
When you actually hear the science and the breakdown of what syncs up, it's still shocking. Like the fact that heart rates are matching, all that stuff. So for that, I guess when you actually hear the science, it is surprising. Just based on my life, though, I'm not shocked by that at all. Like at all. That's my childhood. That's how I made so many. All of my close friends were people that I grew up with in the same room playing video games together.
Yep.
For hours. I mean, you talk about it happens almost immediately. Okay, well, if it happens almost immediately, then I had the same heart rate, brain waves, etc. for 6-7 hours with the same individuals, in some cases multiple times a week. No wonder that I'm so close to them. After just living life, that doesn't shock me at all. But when you actually hear what synchronizes, it's like, how does that work? Where we're looking at a screen and we're connecting that way. But yeah, I've lived it out, man. I totally get it.
So it's a 1? I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem surprising. I think you're intrigued by the science, but you're not surprised.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Like if you would have just flat out said, true or false, your heart rate synchronizes when you play a game with somebody else, I probably would have said true.
Yeah.
Probably would have said true on all those. So yeah, I'd say a 1.
All right. This is very similar in nature, but I want to blow your mind. So that's between friends, like, or even people that know each other well. Okay. Let's go to strangers. So there was a study of Wii bowling. All right. And yeah, seriously. And they were trying to see what the effects of gaming were on people that are kind of opposite of each other. So let me get to it. It's the NTU, the Nanyang Technological University. They discovered that playing the Nintendo Wii game Wii Bowling with a stranger not only makes you like that person more, something you'd expect from almost any enjoyable activity two people perform together, but this is the shocking, surprising part. I should keep saying surprising, but also makes you like everyone else in the world who you perceive to be like your game partner.
Wow.
Let me explain. One of the biggest social problems in Singapore at that time is alienation between young people and senior citizens. They paired up college students and senior citizens for weekly video game dates lasting 30 minutes each. After 6 weeks, the seniors and the young people not only considered each other friends, they had dramatically revised their opinion of the entire other group. They didn't just make one new friend. They started to see all seniors or young people as potential friends. Okay. This did not occur in the study's control group. I like control groups, in which young people, seniors, spent the exact same amount of time just making conversation, watching TV, or working on arts and crafts together. The individuals liked each other more after 6 weeks after hanging out, but they continued to dislike the other seniors or young people in general. In short, they changed their mind about just one person, not the whole group. They remained, unfortunately, physiologically closed off from a whole world of potential allies. So game intervention, like, if I don't want to say, maybe who we dislike in this world, but if you played Wii bowling with your nemesis, you would redesign that entire tribe differently had you just sat down and talked to them. I think there's a lot of that. Like, we need to sit and
Right. You need to sit down and talk with your enemy.
Talk it out. What do you think of the Wii bowling study?
I guess I would say 9. I would say 9 that it's that much more impactful than sitting down and doing arts and crafts. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. Like, I know. Maybe this is a guy thing, but like when you're working together, try to put something together. It oftentimes creates more frustration, right? But still, it just surprises me how much more impact gaming with somebody would have over just sitting down and talking with him. Okay. I would say a 9. It's surprising. Now, if my partner that I was doing it with decided to throw their Wii remote through the TV that I bought, that might change things a little bit. That's happened to me before. But I'll go with a 9. I'll go with a 9 on that one.
Next one is about medication. So there's this game called Remission. They're trying to get cancer patients to take their meds, right? Because it's important that you take your meds. And turns out it's hard to be motivated to do something you don't like to do. The line is that all games are intentionally designed to increase players' feelings of competence, power, and skillful ability over time. So originally in this study, the Hope Lab team hypothesized that 30 hours, of play around this game, so playing this game and whatever, taking their meds, will be necessary to make a positive impact on medication adherence. All right, they're going to play the game, hopefully take more meds. They were amazed. Okay, I'm going to even leave it out there. How many hours do you really think it took to play this game? It's less than 30, and it's not 1. So between 2 and 29. How many hours do you think it took to make a difference for medical adherence?
I mean, based on everything else that you've brought up so far, I would say like 3.
It's 2. And then it got worse. And they expected players to need continual reinforcement, right? So like reminders, like, hey, yeah, you played the game and we just need to follow up with you from the video game every day in order to keep up with their behavior change, right? Because behavior change is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it turned out, I can't make this up. Underlines are too easy sometimes, that playing the game just once was enough. Playing the game once was enough to modify their behavior so that they would play meds or take their meds. So what they found is that when you play a game, it increases your self-efficacy, the belief that you can impact positive change on your life so much that you don't even need to go back to the well. How surprising is that? Any of that? That is the medication self-efficacy of games.
Is this making them more docile? I guess that's where my head goes. So when you say... I'm not fully understanding. So when they're taking their meds, they weren't taking them. We want them to take their medication. We put them in a game, and then all of a sudden their stubbornness dropped. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, their self-efficacy went up. So like they're trying to increase motivation, but they found that before motivation comes self-efficacy, the belief that you can. So. Okay. Players and non-players reported the same levels of motivation, stress, and cancer symptoms and physical side effects, but the game players differed remarkably in one area, is that they reported feeling significantly more powerful and optimistic. So the game provided the context to give them the agency, I guess I would say, the confidence in their skills and abilities in that context. So it was like you play a game first and it gives you the format, the mindset, the skills to then go apply that moving forward, basically forever. That's interesting.
Okay, I'm following now.
Yep. Okay. It's like and I think that one of the takeaways, and I don't want to veer too much, would be if you were trying to like really get better at a skill. I'll just keep it simple and free throws, and you made that a game at the beginning of the year. You would then have the adherence, discipline, efficacy the whole rest of the year, even if you didn't play the game. You could drill it. Like, yep, shoot 10 free throws, shoot 100. But because you had primed that pump, they now look at that same scenario the same way every time. Oh, it's a game.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, we get to move to IV drugs. This one's fun. I'm sure you've heard of this. I hope you haven't. But all right. Says nothing primes the brain for general self-efficacy or the belief that you have the ability to conquer any problem you put your mind to faster or more reliably than video games. And that was kind of the punchline of the last one. This one, a 1998 study, it says video games create a rush in the brain as pleasurable and as powerful as intravenous drugs. To the scientists' astonishment, they found that the increase in dopamine from gameplay was equal to the boost experienced when scientists injected amphetamines intravenously into the same study participants. How surprising is that?
That's a 10. That's a 10. That's insane. Is there a time limit on, or is that like an instantaneous brain reaction?
Yes. So like it's in Reality is Broken, but when they study on Firo, like when you finally get something and you throw your hands in the air, they actually found like that boost is massive. I think Huberman's even touched on it a couple times. But even the point right before something happens, the anticipation of a reward, and it's like my character's gonna fly off the screen or I make it, that boost is almost equal, like you're on edge. Like that boost is so I don't want to use the word too much, but addicting. Like that's the boost we're talking about. Like when you have the play all set up, like in Madden 04, and you don't know if it's going to work or not, and then you finally get it. So both the arrival to and the after effect of that. I think that's what we're kind of looking at, is those individual moments, those bursts. It would depend on the game. I mean, I don't want a blanket statement it, but yeah, I mean, that one's unreal.
That is unreal. that is a massive impact on a human brain without all of the ramifications, the negative ramifications of drugs.
All right, this next one might throw you for a wrench, and you can go on your little preacher rant if you want. Okay, so I'm gonna what was the one from last episode? We're gonna go after tradition. Was the thing. Okay, here's one for you. Let's go after Protestant work ethic. Here you go. All right, scientists have proposed that higher dopamine, so we're still in the dopamine road, right? So if you play games, in the brain may actually be the most important driver of solid work ethic. So if you're playing Madden 04 at your day job, right, and you're getting these spikes, that's a better indicator, which I would probably call harmonious passion or the passion recipe. Better driver, important driver than your work ethic. Jake works hard. Work ethic, this is the punchline, and I'll read a couple other things, is not a moral virtue that can be cultivated simply by wanting to be a better person. Okay? It's actually a biochemical condition that can be fostered purposefully through activity that increases dopamine levels in the brain. That is the fancy way of saying if Jake does more things that replicate Madden 04, his work ethic will go up. It's not Jake's a bad person or a good person. It is that if I can identify the same tasks that make Jake play well, that spikes his dopamine, everybody can work hard. Now, let's go with this. Frequent gamers, defined as people who play at least 9 hours a week, have higher gray matter volume in the left ventral striatum. This is just neuroscience that none of us need to know. The punchline is one of these doctors identified video games as potentially, this is the second surprising thing, video games as potentially the single most effective intervention for increasing neuroplasticity, our ability to learn over time in adults. Her primary strategy: provide students or people with daily experiences of self-efficacy, including frequent video game play. How surprising is that?
I'm going to say, 10. 10. That is a lot to digest. There's a lot of thoughts going on in my head trying to wrap my brain around what you just said about work ethic. Thank you for prefacing that with the Protestant work ethic. Oh my goodness.
I can poke the bear.
Oh, yeah, I could get on a soapbox about that one, but that's a big idea that I'm going to have to process, because I think there's I mean, in my head and what spikes my interest, that is one thing that fascinates me is when science meets religion, right? And the reason being is because for so long those two things have been at odds, and a lot of people have said they've been at odds, and we grow up thinking that they're at odds, and yada yada yada. And the older I get, they are connected in such fascinating ways. This idea of saved by grace versus trying to be saved by works, and our understanding of that, that this is a new wrinkle into that debate in my head. That is what I'm thinking about right now. But to the topic at hand, I think it goes against general thought against games, in the sense that people think that you're just repeating something or just mindlessly mashing buttons. Or even games in real life, that they're less structured, so therefore your mind isn't working as much, or doing as much, or isn't as interactive as it otherwise should be if you were doing something more specific, more focused, more structured. So I'm surprised by all of that, and I think it flies in the face of normal thought and idea when it comes to games.
I would love I know, so when we set up the channel and we're working, I do mini lessons. It's kind of like a teacher. Come to class, I'll teach you something. Like that's it. We have our deep reads here. We have weekly primers. It's just giving you tools and, things that you can take away. Follow along, right? The one that I'm super excited when you and I get more space is I can't wait to listen to your mini sermons. Like, I don't know what your frequency is going to be, but one day, whenever we have a topic, however that's going to be, and I purposely told Jake, you're not allowed to do sermons until your life is settled, and that's a whole nother story. But to hear the rabbit trail you go on some of these is going to be great listening. Like that's a podcast I would listen to, like as I'm walking my dogs, because you start with the idea of like the opening question, same puzzle, right? Like, how do I make this play? How do I do this? And like to see you like move players around and see what works, see what doesn't, and see what others have said. Like, I'm excited for that. So be in tune for mini sermons. We haven't let it go. The playlist currently has 0 up there, buddy. And it's okay. Like, we're going to get to it. Okay. We're going to get to it. But when we get those mini sermons, people, on these topics, it's going to be great. So
you need to send me that work ethic part in text form.
I'll probably, let me see. I'll probably send you like the study that goes with it too.
Please do.
Because it does have 1, 2, 3. It's like 4 to 5 like studies in the back. But I'll find them for you. That one was interesting. That came down to my conclusion when I look at somebody and they look lazy or like, oh, they're not motivated. I'm like, you just got the environment wrong. Like, and so you go back and say, what does this kid do? Like, when is his, her, whatever? It doesn't matter. Dopamine level spiked. Like, because if I can identify how that person plays in the games they like, all I have to do is just recreate that condition. And you fall for it every time. It's like knowing, it's like reverse psychology a little bit, but like, I know that what you're doing to me, but I know that if I go into that scenario and it is like that, and I do get the dopamine from trying to do that new thing, oh yeah, it is just like that. Snickers is a lot like Twix. I don't know. I mean, like, it's not exactly the same, but it has similar traits. And you're like, oh, this is fun. And you're going to pay me money for this? And you're not going to judge me as a person? So if you see demotivation, a lot of the times, it's not a work ethic issue. It is not.
That's so interesting. And man, if you're a coach out there, oh my goodness, how many times as coaches we like, oh, that kid's just not motivated?
Yeah. There it goes.
He shouldn't be playing. Get him out of here. But you prefaced it in religious terms, and I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah.
Right? There's in Christianity we have the law, and Christians look at the law in a very particular way. The law was given by God to create, to instruct how to create heaven on earth. That is what the point was. It is simply guidelines. I'm riffing here. To create dopamine response to create the environment of heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Not to earn heaven on earth, to create heaven on earth. Yeah, there's a lot going in. We can move on.
That's going to go in the mini sermon. Write it down.
But bringing it back to the topic, we as coaches are, one of our responsibilities, and this might be arguably the biggest responsibility you have as a coach, is to create heaven on earth for every one of your players.
Yes.
In your practice environment, your game environment, you are to create heaven on earth. You are to create an environment that is perfect for them to grow and develop.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just keep going with the analogy, be supernatural beings here on earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weighty task, but I think scientifically we have the ability to do that.
Correct.
I mean, it's absolutely an art, but there's a science behind the art, and I think that could be a way that we could greatly impact every one of our teams.
That was like a long-winded way of saying go buy the book SuperBetter at bookshop.org. This is our second read. Just kidding. But not really. You should get the book. I'm going to move to the next one. So that was a 10. I'm going to go with that. Now, this one is I want to speak to the people that when you see all these headlines about video game addiction. Okay. So this is another one. Okay. So I'm going to read just one contradictory set. So one headline says, studies show video games linked to depression and lower life satisfaction. And then the other side of the mouth says, study shows frequent gamers experience greater levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Literally the opposite headline. So what's going on there? What's surprising? It's not that either group of researchers is wrong. They're both right. So here's the surprising thing. It's not surprisingly a matter of which games you play, because I think we condemn, and there are some games that are garbage out there, okay? Like if it's mature content, like it's, yeah, right? Mm-hmm. So let's get around that, but how much time you spend playing them. We will tell you at the end of the episode, like how many hours a week. So if you want some guardrails for yourself and for the people around you. Instead, what does matter? It depends on why you play the games. Do you play to escape your real life, or do you play to make your real life better? Okay. An escapist approach to play really does increase depression, worsen social isolation, and make you much less likely to achieve your life goals. But you have to stop thinking of games as a distraction from real life and start thinking of them as a source of genuine strength, skills, and power. Okay? So how surprising is that to you? I know it's a little underwhelming to read, but this escapist factor, it's like the number one factor that predicts excessive or pathological gameplay is when you escape daily life. If you're using X as an escape. How surprising is that to you?
I'd be curious how you can tell the difference. In my mind, like I think almost all cell phone games are probably escapism games, it would seem.
Ooh, that's a good well said.
Because you're probably around, yeah, I don't know. I would venture to guess that that's more the case. Versus games that you're playing kind of for a purpose, growth. I would wonder what that looks like, because I never sat down and played a game and was playing the game. I wasn't playing the game to escape reality. I was more playing the game. I didn't have a purpose in my head for playing the game, right? See what I'm saying? So like, how do you define, oh, I'm playing the game for this purpose or that purpose? Because I don't think anyone sits down to play a game in that mode. It would seem to me it's like either you're playing a game for the escapism purposes to escape your reality. And I think games have become, and it's been concerning to me, right? There's this movement in games to be ultra realistic.
Yes.
In the sports world, I think of like GTA trying to create this weird realism factor, and I think that's hurt games. My favorite games were, yes, there are the realistic games, but then there's also, I think a slugfest, which is, I know there's violence, but like
it's MLB slugfest, people. It's a baseball game.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. That's a good distinction to make. But like you'd get a hit, and you could. First of all, the ball, the pitches where if he threw a screwball, the ball would go around like this, right? But then you could get on base and you could like punch the first baseman. It was completely unrealistic. but it didn't like tend me to violence, and it was just a great way to like a creative outlet, right? That I think we're missing in games these days. Anyways, back to the topic of it seems like games are now designed to enter you into another reality that is too close to the actual reality that you're supposed to live in.
It's so like Inception.
Well, right. So it's like games are now designed to escape you from that reality, as opposed to being so different from reality that your brain knew it. Am I making sense here? And where I'm going with this, like the line is getting so blurred now that I think it's way easier to escape your reality as opposed to just opening up your brain and imagination to this brand new world.
So that's how she died in the movie. Your world is not real. We got to learn from our movies.
Or take the blue pill.
The Matrix, Inception, Real Ready Player One. Like these are all there. I mean, it's coming. So I actually prefer a little bit of like, I know it's like Slugfest is a good example of that. It's like where it is a little bit out there. I liked that you could do things in a video game you couldn't do in real life. Right? You can have somebody who is a massive human being and they can run super fast. I remember like NCAA football before they had all their like trademark things, and you could create a guy that was just like, there's no way in the world like that big of character, you know, could run over people. It was just, or that small person could do that thing. Like, I mean, like that's what people do is you kind of push things to the extreme. I don't like
triple play when we created all of our friends, right? We'd create some of us that were just tiny and large and some that were massive.
Yeah. It was funny. It was super funny. Okay. I'm going to leave it. Last one. And this one's, I know you have more kids than I got, but this one's hard for me as a parent because I'm not good at this. We're gonna have to hit the pause button. What's up? It's called fun framing, Jake. It's what happens when you decide to do something for the pure pleasure, excitement, or enjoyment of it. Okay. So if you can identify the thing as just a way to have fun, okay. And I'm not going to go over all the examples, but I'm going to give you the surprising one. Fun framing has another benefit. It can help you break the habit of procrastinating. Okay? So if you can frame something as fun, so there's a study of psychologists. They're always psychologists. What's up, psychologists? DePaul University, Case Western University decided to investigate the reason some people chronically procrastinate. I am guilty of this. I am a procrastinator. So
big time.
I got to work on this. But they had half the participants were invited to take a math test. The other half were invited to play a math game. In reality, the test and the game were the exact same activity, Jake. The only difference was the framing. They didn't have to practice or prepare. What happened? The participants who thought they were preparing for a test were far more likely to procrastinate. Shocker. They waited on average. This is what has to be surprising. Waited on average 60% until 60% of the practice period had passed to get started. But participants who thought they were preparing for a game were much more likely to dive in right away and take every opportunity to get better. They hardly procrastinated at all. Why? Because they didn't consider the activity something they wanted to avoid. It was going to be fun, so they got started right away. Even though it was the exact same activity, the game players jumped in with more enthusiasm. There that is. What's up? We're studying enthusiasm. Than the test takers. Both of these studies, or the other study too, show that what makes an activity fun is not the nature of the activity, but how you approach it. How surprising is that to you?
I would say a 3. I'm a procrastinator big time. And I'm just kind of, honestly, I've given up. I'm like, that's just who I am. And honestly, it makes me work better. Like if I start something early on, the motivation isn't there. Like the thought, the juices aren't flowing. And I'm just like, I just have the approach of half button it. And then it gets to the deadline time and like, boom, brain starts cranking. Everything's flowing. It's great. Like I'm proud of the fact that I can write a 10-page paper in 4 hours. Like that's just something that I kind of pride myself on.
So what you're actually looking for, we studied this as a tangent, but you're looking for risk. Like you're looking to add more, dopamine to the system. And the way to do that is you need the rush of the deadline. Yep. I found that interesting is like recreating the condition So if I can't get you with the puzzle, I need to add some adrenaline, you know?
Bingo.
So that's a whole nother deal. So, all right. So, you know, what I see, Jake, you know, based on your numbers, you were most surprised by the Wii bowling and the Stranger Thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get you back from the work ethic.
Probably not.
And the other one was the IV, you know, the drugs like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good. Okay. That was your numbers. If you have different numbers and you played along, let us know. Everybody's shocked, but these are all like interventions or facts about games. And I thought that was a lot easier way to access just some of the book. You have to remember this book is huge. It's like 400 some odd pages. It's massive. So, all right. So let's get to the nitty gritty. So we talked about games. Games are cool. We played with a purpose. What is SuperBetter? Okay. SuperBetter, like how do you be gameful? Well, SuperBetter has 7 rules. And what I liken it to, there is an app. They came out with a new app. You can subscribe. You can create a squad. You can play. It's there. You don't need it necessarily. Jane's great. Keith Wakeman, the CEO, is great. Talked to him several times. I'll admit during the last presidential election in the US, right before it, I needed distraction. So I actually taught this book to a group of people all over the world. I have several cool people I met. They were awesome. It wasn't a huge group, you know, but I taught it through and we actually did the book. So the exercise in the book, we did each of the rules for a week and a 7-week thing, 8-week thing. And then we kept the group going. But what I liken it to is it's a language, like a common language, a way to fun frame things, and a structure. So if you can learn the rules or just the names of like, oh, that's a power up, that's this, that's that, it completely changes everything. It is kind of like some of the other happiness research we talked about earlier the month, Eat More Corn episode. It is a little bit corny, but it's nice to have names for things as well. So if you can get around that, I think the sweet spot of this is probably right before like varsity athletes, but I found adults like this. It doesn't matter. So let's look at the infographic, Jake, and then I'll explain the rules. And then you and I are going to go through them one by one and we'll play with them. Okay. All right. Jake, tell me if you can see the screen. All right. Can you see this? Yes.
Bingo.
All right. So this is the SuperBetter infographic. It's probably my favorite thing. One of my dreams one day would be to see SuperBetter become a board and card game where a lot of it was adapted for analog style because this would be a really useful thing. I don't have any IP ownership. I suppose I could rent it off of Keith. But I printed this and laminated it and it works really, really well. So this is kind of the overview of SuperBetter. And I'm just going to go through the 7 rules as we see on here. So SuperBetter really is about challenging yourself. You know, what is your challenge? You need to challenge yourself. When we have goals and we have things we're working towards, we're just better people. Again, I've said you're stronger than you know. You surprise yourself. You're a hero to others. All the good stuff. The second thing is you do need to find and activate power-ups. And power-ups are anything you can do to feel a little bit better. And there are 4 types. There's physical, mental, emotional, and social. We'll talk about more in depth. This is just the flyover. The next thing is you need to find and battle bad guys. So as you're on your journey to whatever you're going to do, you're going to face some obstacles. And these are not necessarily people. They could be just challenges along the way. And you rename them a bad guy and you see what you can do with it. It's like, okay, well, how can you defeat this thing? And you give it a name and you make it playful. And then there are different ways you can vanquish them. D is adopt a secret identity. Let me see. Is that even on here? I don't think so. But it's like your superhero nickname. It's the strengths that you bring and it makes you the hero of the story. And you can mishmash that up. It's super fun. I think it's one of the great ways to get to know somebody is who are the heroes they look up to and what would their secret identity be. The next one is seek out and complete quests. So as you create an epic win, and the epic win is that major breakthrough or big goal you want to accomplish that takes some time, you have to complete the little mini lily pad steps along the way. And you can have some, mini quests, a little bit bigger quests, a little bit smaller epic wins. You keep setting them until you get SuperBetter. What is just, the path is SuperBetter. F is go for the sixth one. There is go for an epic win. So you need to have this big goal out there, something you're reaching towards, that peak, that summit. I like that image there. And then along the way, you need to recruit some allies. So they're people or even character traits that help you along your way to help you win. So you're going to get boosts. So not only do you face bad guys, adverse events or obstacles, but you have people like you can look to, whether you know them or not, along the way. And that's what more or less SuperBetter is like. And we'll go through these one by one. And Jake's going to be our tester, our gamer here, and we'll apply that. You can do the same, but I want you to know how accessible this is. This is one of the instant things you could take away no matter who you are, whether you're an individual, an athlete. You could apply this in your coaching, the way you communicate with your athletes, or even a parent. It just, the way to have that same language is so important. I can't overemphasize that. So Jake, any questions before we jump in? Pretty straightforward. It's not too crazy.
Yep. Nope. Looks good. Let's go.
Okay. So we're going to kind of fly. I'm just going to do one thing with each of these, and we'll kind of create your character. So when we talk about like the peak performance triangle, motivation, learning, and creativity, motivation gets you into the game, right? Gets you on the board. Learning keeps you going, keeps you there, and creativity helps you steer, right? How do you face your bad guys? How do you face your allies? So right now we're more or less, I'm going to go in a different order than the book, the one I prefer, because I think it's a better sequence for what it is. So the first one is a secret identity, Jake. Okay. So it is, I'm going to go to the right page. Just want to define terms for everybody. A heroic nickname that highlights your unique personal strengths. Now, we're not going to do this to fruition. Any of this to fruition. Get the book for that, okay? Third affiliate read. There you go. So the quest in the book is, I want to start here, Jake, because this is interesting. Is quest 35. Assemble your hero dream team. So getting SuperBetter means developing your heroic qualities. You can find these qualities in any heroic narrative, so any medium that you really want. Your job, Jake, is to assemble your hero dream team. Simply 3 or more heroes assembled together to achieve a common goal. Okay, they don't have to be people you know. They could be, but it could be really any 3 heroes. What character makes you feel like you could do anything if you were more like them? What story inspires you to strive harder? Whose adventures embody the kind of life you want to lead? So some of the questions, and I'm just giving you some wait time so you can think. Favorite TV character, movie character, book character, athlete. Athlete one is really interesting, by the way. When you look at, and I'll give you mine so you can figure yours. I'll come back to that. Spiritual figure, modern real life hero, somebody else famous or not that you admire. So I did this, Jake, and I had people, like, it completely changed my perspective on myself. So I had athletes like Ben Wallace, which I hope you smile. I was like, why do I look up to this guy? Like, he was the only non-Division I athlete to get to the Hall of Fame, but he rebounded, he stole, he blocked, he had crazy fashion. He worked hard. Nobody thought he could get it. That's probably why I like Jimmy Butler so much too. But I did that across the board, and all of the athletes I really admired had the same story arc. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm that person. Like, that's it. And I'm not critiquing anybody else's hero team at all, but I want you to know, like, when you pick somebody, you look back and you're like, because I tried to pick one per sport.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, good grief. So I did go through the exercise more or less, and then the idea is that you pick a skill, power, virtue, or character strength that you admire about each of them. So let's try it. Let's try and get maybe 2 or 3 just for contrast and comparison's sake. So if you built a hero dream team, they don't have to be athletes. Who would be on that hero dream team?
Bruce Wayne for his money. No. I'm going to stick to athletes. I'm going to stick to the topic at hand. I'm going to stick to athletes. Man, my athlete dream team. Okay. Kevin Garnett for his intensity and his heart. For sure. Like the passion and the heart that he had when he played. always stuck out to me. Probably the number one thing that drew me to him. Trying not to have such a Minnesota bias on this one.
No, that tells us a lot, actually.
Okay, let's go Chris Carter.
Okay.
Chris Carter for his attention to detail, his consistency, his exactness, and then let's grab one from the soccer world that I would grab. I'm thinking early Jake. Who do you look up to? Who did he want to be? Michelle Akers. Michelle Akers was a midfielder for the U.S. women's national team. One of the first books I read was a biography about her. For me, is kind of like the first sports badass that I ever came across.
How so? Like, what do you mean by that? I get it, but
tough as bleeping nails. That one.
As evidenced by, if you remember,
she played through everything. Like, there was no injury that stopped her. And then, in just thinking about all the athletes that went through my head, I think the trait that most connects with me is the engine. Like the heart, the soul, the engine of a team is the one that connects most with me. That's exactly what Michelle Akers was. If I'm building a team, I'm looking for the heart, the soul, and the engine of the team first. And then building from around that. If I have that, I'll have something to work off of. When I coached, especially soccer teams, that is the first spot that I would look at. Who do I need to put here? Who is the best option here? And then I'd build everything around that.
I have so much I could pass to a psychologist right now. I'm not one. I'm not going to play one, but I hear that. Like, just think of what you just did. Like, I don't want to undersell this. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, who are your favorite athletes? When you stop and say, who do I look up to and why? And you do take a moment to, like, I actually like to write the words. And then I would prefer, if I did this as an activity or I was coaching somebody, I would use this and I would have them write a paragraph. And tell me why about that person. Like, really flesh that out. Like, stream of consciousness, right? But what I gathered from that is not only the engine, but each of those people had a high degree of roots and loyalty, which you have in spades. And so it's interesting. And there's the concept of, like, it just accentuates, or it shows the traits you already possess. But it's like a superhero mirror is what it's called. But that's interesting. That tells me so much about you in such a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we would craft a secret identity around that. So I want to, I'm not going to make you pick a name today, buddy, because that's something that can be personal and you don't always share with somebody. So, but I want to just illuminate the audience as well. So what you can do is you can spot the strengths that you have and your heroes have. That's probably one of the next steps. Jane prefers values in action or via character strengths from Peterson and Seligman. Very, very good test, but adopting a secret identity. So I'll tell you the next step, and if you want to take a stab, you can. So you pick one of your heroes from your dream list. You could combine two or more heroes for your dream. You could give yourself an honorific, like sheriff, princess, queen, king, president, something like that. You could pick a new middle name. You could try an online generator, or you could have a fun adjective or title. But your goal is you'd have a name, like an alter ego, secret identity name. And this hero's strengths, superpowers, virtues, and special abilities are. So you would have a name, and you would say, this character has an engine. They're loyal. They have roots. They have intensity and heart, attention to detail. Like, you just list the same things. And you adopt the secret identity. So in that field of play, as Todd Herman would say in the alter ego, when I show up in this arena, I'm not Jake anymore. I'm this person.
General badass.
Yes, general. Call the general. Yeah, that's a good commercial. But yeah, you get the point, right? So I don't know. I've never tested this on like a group of team, because I think there's an aspect where people could needle each other for it. But what I would say as a coach or an athlete is if you go first, everybody, every time I've taught this, everybody's names are cheesy. And that's okay, right?
Mhm.
It's very okay. And you learn a lot about people. But as soon as you realize that everybody has these heroes and the names that people come up with are cheesy, it just gives you a bit of vulnerability for each other. And you can make them sound cool if you want. It is possible. But I would say, looking at some of these on here, like some of them said, like Aphrodite, Captain Wonder, Mary, the Queen of Reinvention, Jim, the High Priest of Rock and Roll Cooking, Jane, Adventure McGonigal, Harry, the Bear Smith, Super Mario, Chelsea the Great. Somebody put their name backwards. All those European names. This one's funny. I'm not going to say it on there. I'm because they were trying to take medication and like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. So she said, I'm Mary effing Poppins. So she would say it out loud. I just like trying to imagine that. I'm like, oh, Mary effing Poppins. Woo! Just like that. So, all right. You got the idea of secret identity?
I got the idea. I mean,
Okay.
that's even something that would be valuable just to do. If we don't share it with the team or make it a team event, just each individual doing it and assessing themselves, right? Because it's a great self-assessment and looking at, who do I admire and why, and what does that say about me? What do I bring? What do I want to bring? Obviously, you can't make them do it, but there's real value in that, and just them knowing who they are and when they show up, that can make a big influence.
Yep. We'll go through the next one pretty quickly because we don't need to identify allies together. But allies, who are allies? Allies are recruiting allies is friends and family members who help you along the way. And the point of Jane is that you're surrounded by potential allies. Once you get your secret identity and you start like an epic win, there's all sorts of people. If you say, hey, I'm going that way and I need help. And now people provide different kinds of help. I'm aware of that. But it's hard to be vulnerable enough, as Jane says, and ask for help with a serious problem. But it's easy to invite someone else to play a game. Hey, could you help me on my game? And she goes full into the SuperBetter method here. But I want to tell you about some of the ways you can help out an ally. 5 ways your allies can help. Number 1 is they can suggest a quest. Like, here's something you can do. You can activate a power-up together. Hey, let's meditate together or whatever it is. We'll get to power-ups. Brainstorm a way to battle a bad guy. Like, hey, I'm getting my butt kicked by blank. What do you think? And so they can kind of give you a fresh perspective. You can have a weekly or daily debrief or check-in. Like they can hold you accountable. Like, hey, did you activate your power-ups today? How's that going? Like, just keeping you kind of like a coach. You can celebrate an epic win together. It's like you can set a date. Like, hey, when you run that marathon, the next day we're going out, kind of thing. And that's really, really helpful. So just know that there are plenty of allies out there. How to be an awesome ally. You got to know your hero. Like, knowing what I know about Jake, you got to know who they are. You can give them power-ups. You can help them, your hero, battle a bad guy, give them a quest, get a report, hunt the good stuff, and celebrate their secret identity. So there's lots of things. You can keep in tune with them, be a rock, just be there. So we'll cover friendship, basically synonymous with allyship. So that's an ally. Okay, here we go. Activate power-ups. So I just want to distinguish. So to start the power-ups, we're going to cruise, is this idea of there's different types. So there was physical, mental, social, and emotional. I'm just buying myself time as I flip to the right spot. Is that we need to collect and activate power-ups. Good things that reliably make you feel happier, healthier, and stronger. Okay. And some of us are better at some of these than others. It's good to have a good portfolio of all of these, but know that we do tend to gravitate towards one arena or another. And what this really does is it helps you increase vagal tone. And that's from Stephen Porges' work. Also you could probably throw in heart rate variability, but if you do things that make you feel good, you're going to feel better. It's not really crazy. That's not surprising. So what I want to ask you, Jake, is there's collecting power-ups, which means you're going to identify them, and then there's activating them, which means you do them. So we're just going to be on the collecting side. Let me give you just an example of each, just so you're you're kind of on the same page, because some of these people really mess up as emotional and mental. But physical resilience, anything physical, like drinking a glass of water. Emotional resilience has to do with priming your emotions, like positive emotion. So singing your lungs off is one. Social resilience is any time where you can interact with another human being in a positive way. Gratitude, sending a cool comment. And mental resilience is something to look forward to in the next week. So it's a little bit more engaging cognitively. And I know it's hard to separate those sometimes, and there's a lot of overlap. But what I want to ask is, what are some power-ups that really work for you? Like, what's something physical, mental, social, emotional that really boosts you, like really does power you up as a player or character? Is there anything that comes to mind?
In-depth discussion with somebody helps me walk away rejuvenated. So not like shallow topical conversation, but really getting into, if I were to sit down and have a conversation with somebody about work ethic and the Protestant movement, that would be a power up.
It's coming back. Can't get rid of it. Can't get away.
Would be a great example. Or having conversations, even like sports wise, that you may not think are deep, but like getting into talking about the finer points of Joe Mauer's career, and comparing Joe Mauer and Mike Trout, and two of the arguably greatest talents that I have seen in terms of hitting a baseball. Neither have won a playoff game. It's just mind-blowing facts like that, right? I'm getting into that. So those are certainly power-ups for me. Physical power-ups for me. A good meal, man. Oh, a good meal will power me up. Like I mean, obviously scientifically, but just mentally, it boosts things too.
Now, everybody that's listening or watching, heaven forbid you watch us on YouTube for very long, and you're just listening, and you have not watched the previous episode on our in-depth discussion on the mac and cheese food truck that we could not get around, or at least I could not get around. So besides the mac and cheese, Jake, I don't want to get nutrition. What's a soft word for that? Advocates angry at you. Yeah. But can you give me an idea of a good meal? Like what's a good meal?
So, okay, let's really simplify this. If I go out to eat and I get the bill and I'm like, yep, that was worth it. Maybe because the service was good, because the food was fresh and good, right? That's a good meal to me. Or if I'm at home, good home cooked meal that has got flavor. For me, it's got to have the right texture. I'm a texture guy when it comes to foods. Okay. So like we sat down, we had honeydew. We had a honeydew melon cut up last night, 2 nights ago. And I put the honeydew melon in my mouth and it was warm. And it basically just turned into like a warm loogie in my mouth. Meal was ruined the rest of the day. I couldn't do it. Oh my goodness. So for me, I'm not too specific, man. I'm not a huge foodie, but I still enjoy a good meal and just flavorful. If it's something new, that always piques my interest. I like trying new things within reason, right? And if I go out to eat and feel like it was worth it, and I think that there's a lot when you have 4 kids too. Like, did I sit down and no one scream at me for a whole meal? That goes a long way to be like, yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it.
No, I'm gonna pass this buck to you because we're gonna do one more power up because you missed the emotional. Okay, just for the audience. I want you to pull a Pharrell because I need to go check something quick, and I'll be right back. I need you to Pharrell for me for just a minute or two. What are 3 songs that make you happy?
Oh boy, 3 songs that make me happy. I could name any Luke Combs song probably. Geez, now you put me on the spot. Growing Up and Getting Old. Boom. The Fast Car will make me happy. It's all over the radio right now. Any Luke Combs song, actually, right now, we'll just say that. Otherwise, make me happy. I listen to music to get me going, not make me happy. I don't know if that's normal or not. I'm trying to think of another musician that'll make me happy when I listen to him. Oh, maybe that's why I like Luke Combs so much. It actually makes me happy. All the other music either gets me feeling like I'm on lyrical drugs or it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Like I listen to The Fray, but that makes me more sad. Eminem gets me not happy but ready to run through a brick wall. I'm just saying anything Luke Combs.
Okay. I cry every time I listen to Even Though I'm Leaving. It's because my dad has dementia at the moment and like early onset Alzheimer's, and I'm like, dang it. Like, and I know it's gonna happen. Like it's a good song. Like, you know, and there's other father-son songs like that, but I'm like, dang it. I agree with that. That's a good assessment.
His songs truly make me actually think of my wife when he sings them, and I think that's the connection that I have with him. I Got Away with You, and
I love him. Like we were talking about, like my Emma asked about Luke Combs. Like, why do you like Luke Combs, Dad? Don't you? I'm like, yeah, like he's a dude's dude. Like I he feels like a regular guy, and then you realize how popular he is in such a short time. You're like, oh my god, he's not a regular guy.
No.
But such a good story, such a good thing. If people don't like you after this episode, Jake, I don't know if they ever will. Like our ratings are gonna have to boost after this. People watch this one, they're like, I love Jake. I just want to eat mac and cheese with him and listen to Luke Combs.
Oh god, that sounds like an afternoon.
Oh, and debate
this afternoon.
and debate why Mike Trout's better than Joe Mauer. This is just like we should sell this. Like, you know, we mutual meeting spot in Arizona. I'm not saying where, but if you want to hang out with Jake and have a good time, he's got a food truck.
No, I did not have a food truck. I did not have a food truck. And we would debate who's the more overrated player, Mike Trout or Joe Mauer. That's what we would do, because that would really get people fired up if they're baseball heads.
And this is how I grew up. Anyways, almost quite literally minus the Luke Combs. So we had Luke Combs. It would have been good. All right,
we were in like 70s rock phase for a while there, weren't we? Nah, maybe
80s. I don't remember 70s rock, buddy.
Okay, you're right. We were 80s. Good point.
Yeah, it was cool then. All right, let's keep rolling. We're gonna wrap up as we get to these last couple. And now you go for an epic win. So I like to identify the character, secret identity, figure out who your allies are, like who's on your support team, who's gonna help you along this journey. Find out what power-ups work for you.
Luke Combs is my power-up.
That's an emotional resilience one. Yes.
I see why you asked the question now. That just clicked in my head.
Oh, good. +1 emotional resilience. You're welcome.
Sorry. Proceed.
You're good. Is an epic win and in an awe-inspiring outcome that helps you be more motivated and less afraid of failure. And a good gameful goal has some traits, according to Jane. It is realistic, challenging, energizing, and forgiving. And so it has these different elements that feature in games. All games are designed to be winnable. They're designed to be challenging. They obviously pump you up. And if you don't achieve success on your first try, all is not lost. Like, you're okay. You're not a bad person. It's going to be all right. That play just sucked. Sorry. So that's kind of what we look like there. And she has some really beautiful scaffolds in this book, like good questions. Her big thing with goals is that they're measurable. And if you haven't done goal setting before, there's different systems out there, and I have opinions, let's just say, on them. For simplicity's sake, her thing is just make sure there's a number involved, right? So let me give you some contrast. So like some ones that don't work, people will say things like this: get more sleep, lose weight, save money, be less dependent on pain medication, feel more gratitude, start running a routine. There we go. Be more confident in social settings. Those are all bad goals. Like, they're goals, but you don't know, how do you know if you got it? So the contrast to that is adding numbers or frequency or time. Get 8 hours of sleep every night for 1 week. Lose 5 pounds. Put $250 in savings this month toward a dream trip. Go 24 hours without needing pain medication. Send a thank you message to a different friend every day for 21 days. Finish a 5K at a networking event. Introduce myself to 10 people. So the goal with an epic win with each of your athletes, or even if you're an individual athlete or even a parent, like knowing your kid's epic win, like what are they after? And I'll just give some of the questions. We don't have to design one, Jake, because I'll just use the one you shared with me before. So quest 41 is planning a measurable win. And there's 3 exercises here that really work. I love these questions because they help quite a bit. I'm not going to read them all, just a couple. What would you feel really proud to do at the end of the season? What do you want to go an entire 24 hours without doing? That's a small one. What's a personal best record you could aspire to this year? Let me go to quest 42. Look for a breakthrough moment. What is a big step you could take in your career as a coach or an athlete that would signify a major commitment to your goals? What's something that scares you that you could reasonably do in the first half of the season? What new skill or strength could you develop and show off at the end of the year? What have you been procrastinating about or avoiding that you really want to get done once and for all? Can you think of any other major leveling up moment? And then the last one, and I'll let you go, Jake, on the riff, is sneaking up sideways. So that's like going directly towards the goals. These are ones that help you kind of be a little bit more creative. So what's the most fun thing you can imagine doing in your sport or your thing, or a certain amount of time from now? What's an activity you've always wanted to try and explore but never felt like you had the time? Or what's maybe something you wanted to do in your sport that you've never gotten to do? Like, oh, it'd be cool if we did blank. How could you just express yourself creatively? And then there's just some other ones that are a little bit less sports related, but like, what's a new skill you could learn? A challenge you've always wondered if you had it, what it took, kind of thing. So you said an epic win. I know you said an epic win. We talked about another episode about, you juggled or dribbled, and that was an epic win. You said a number. That was a really good example. And then you worked your way up to that. And that was a good example. But anything stand out from you with a epic win?
Goal setting is tough. I will admit that goal setting for me is very tough because I've tried it. They don't tend to motivate me very much, if I'm being completely honest. If you tell me like, hey, or if someone else tells me, that's one thing. But internal goals of like, hey, I want to do this. That just doesn't motivate me. Like, hey, get 25 juggles in 2 months. That doesn't motivate me. What motivates me is, did I get better today at juggling than I was yesterday? Because that is, I know I can control that. So just in my own head and movement, it helps. And then I think there's a large fear of failure around goal setting. And so to bring it back to the topic, are there ways that we can make goal setting a game? Because if we can flip it into that mindset, we have taken that fear of failure and flipped it. We've changed the perspective on it, I think, right? I often think of Super Mario, right? So many kids will pick up a game like Super Mario and just go and go and go and go and go. And it doesn't matter how many times they don't pass the level or they die, they get up and they try it again, right? They know the goal and they just don't care about how many times they fail. They just care about accomplishing the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how many times I've asked players, I've done this a couple of different ways, hey, write down a goal for yourself. And I've tried like, hey, give it to me. Hey, just put it somewhere that you'll see it again and track your progress. And I've done like, hey, keep track of numbers and stuff. And there are so many kids that are hesitant or reluctant to do it because to me, it's a fear of failure. What if I don't get it? Is coach going to find out? I'm going to be sad that I didn't do what I set out to do. And so there's just, well, I don't want to do it then. I'm not going to put myself out there. So why are they willing? Why is a person, a kid, an adult willing to put themselves out there and fail a bajillion times at passing a Super Mario level, but something tangible that they're actually doing in real life that they or their parents or their family is spending money on won't go out and reach a goal because they're afraid to fail? I think that psychology is super interesting, and we have to find ways to take that fear of failure and make it a game, so that they're willing to go out and fail a bajillion times to accomplish their goal.
Correct. All right, now I was going to save this for the end in our goosh, our ending, or after our most valuable idea. But all right, Jake, I'm going to let you guess. The science is here. What percentage, it's right in the beginning, what percentage, 0 to 100, I'll even read it, do gamers spend their time failing when they play their favorite games?
Oh, 98%.
80. They fail. Gamers, after all, spend on average 80% of their time failing when they play a game.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So I would say the fun framing, we'll come back to that at the end, is a really big deal. I also think the size of it, we'd have to go back to our industriousness section where we talked about, go check that out. That was a good month. I love that month. That was good. Working smart and working hard. But I think that's under that's the work. Well, both. But remember when we were in talent code and it's like pick a target, reach for target, and evaluate the gap between A and B. Having that clear goal, I think people have too vague a goal. So one time they don't have a number and they don't chunk it down enough to where it's like, oh, like I just have to do 2 of these. And so they don't even build up the momentum. I think if the inertia is just too great, or if you don't have the flow triggers stacked in, much less making it playful or a game. Because the words I like to use, and I'll foreshadow this a little bit, is I like the word game clincher. So when you make a drill, you give it a funny name. I do the same thing with bad guys or allies or your secret. Give it a fun name. Don't just call it, soft toss. Call it, I don't know. I mean,
weenie throw.
Sure. Watermelon destruction. Like you just have, I don't know. I mean,
okay,
you're mad,
fine,
whatever. But you come up with that together, like cooperatively, and you make up a name. And then you're like you said with Mario, Tim Ferriss calls it in the 4-Hour Workweek dreamlining. I like the word game lining. So in video games, they actually plan out the map and the levels with convexity. So if I start in A, I could go to B or C, but then I come back to D no matter which choice I made. So like as you see that kind of SuperBetter route, I like to see each level, each little mini quest along the way, which is our next thing, which is quests. So I'll keep this one short. Quests are the little mini lily pads that get you to your epic win. So it's just anything that you can do that makes progress towards that goal. I think that's interesting, is like any inch of progress. Like even if you put in some time, that's progress. There's like James Clear said, sometimes you don't always see the results. It's not linear.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, it takes a little bit and then you hit that exponential curve after, you've made those habits come stick. So like what I like to do is, usually a season's a defined period of time. Mm-hmm. And so by the end of the season, 12 weeks from now, let's just say for round numbers, here's where I want to be. Okay, that's a number, right? Here's what I want to, how far can I get? Well, what's half of that? So let's check halfway. Like people really like beginning, middle, and ends. And then you put it in the middle, right? So we have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Okay, where are we at, a quarter of that, 1/4 and 3/4. And then you chunk down from there. And now you have different checkpoints that you can say, okay, well, by this time, if I was working linearly, I should be about here. And it's okay if you're a little behind or a little ahead. That happens.
Well, this is going to be my hopefully common plug. Development is not linear, everybody. Development is not linear ever in the history of everdom. Okay, just because your child was at stage 2 does not mean they're going to automatically progress to stage 3. They might have to go back to 1.5. They might have to go back to 1 and then they'll go up to 3, or they might go to 2 and then go to 4. Or there is no predicting it. It is not linear. It is a journey, right? And journeys have obstacles, and then you'll get a power up. That's how development happens. Okay, so don't get stuck on this expectation that, well, they were there this year, so they're going to be here next year. Not how it works. Okay. Some people develop and bloom when they're 18. Some do it when they're 7. Some do it when they're 25. It is not linear. Okay, thank you. Proceed now.
No, you're good. And the point of what you're saying is like, if you're facing bad guys along the way and you get stuck, like everybody gets stuck. You just get stuck because you're tired. Like we were talking about that the other day, is like, I'm just tired, you know, from ABC. But you have to come at it with the lens of curiosity and adventure. Like, I'm on this mission to go this way and to do this thing, and I'm taking committed action to get there. It's not that you ever even achieve it. It's that you're in the game. That's what the hero's journey is about. And that's why I think probably one of the reasons why I like SuperBetter so much is that it really emulates that hero's journey. And you say, hey, you know what? This is going to be fun. That's kind of one of the phrases there. All right. Last thing, last two things is challenge yourself. That's one of the first. You got to challenge yourself. You need a goal. You need something to work towards. People are just better people when they happy people. If you want to find a happy person, give them a project. Like you usually have something they're up to. Jane does a really good job. I'm going to allude to it, but we're not going to do the exercise for time's sake. But in the challenge yourself section, I just want people to know, how do you view the thing you're about to do? The quest. Let's just say it's a quest. We just got out of quest. Is that a challenge or is that a threat? So a threat mindset increases your cortisol, your insulin. It's not just a psychological barrier. It's damaging to your physical health, like your mental and physical resilience. So is this a threat? Like, I'm threatened. And it kind of speaks to that episode we talked about, the first 2 seconds of flow, whether you take action and you have courage or you fall into kind of that PTSD. It's flow versus PTSD. Whereas a challenge mindset is kind of like that gameful attitude. Like, I believe I can do this. I have less anxiety. You adapt to change. You believe you have support. You have competence. Your body literally is relaxed or in active mode. So Jane does a good job. She has a cool assessment where she goes through and she asks you 20 questions. 10 are a challenge mindset and 10 are a threat. So I'll give you a couple examples. You could say, Jake's going to juggle a soccer ball, whatever that quest would be, right? I'm eager to tackle this obstacle. Yes or no? Thinking about this obstacle stresses me out. I'm worried about this obstacle might reveal my weakness. I can become a stronger person because of this obstacle. So you go through this and you get like a score, more challenge or threat, and you can assess that. And if you have more threat, then clearly you need to go back and redesign somehow, is more or less the point. This is why I go in a different order than the book presents. So let's move forward and talk about bad guys. So this is the last one. Now, when we alluded to this way back when. So when we did our first deep read on the comfort crisis, remember we were talking about the comfort creeps? This is that exact section. So if you don't know, we covered industriousness, and the first book we read was Michael Easter's Comfort Crisis. And in the book, he talks about a number of comfort creeps. And I tried to talk about bad guys, like naming them something crazy. This is where that comes from. So a bad guy along the way is anything that blocks your progress or causes you anxiety, pain, or distress. Okay, so you need to be able to spot them, battle them, and then overcome them. Now, what I want people to know, I taught this book. I had people, like real people with real issues, like serious issues that I was not qualified to talk about, but I was just the leader. Really good people. Like, the one thing that they said over and over, like, we didn't even really get goals that like quests and epic wins that much. We did. It was the adherence and like the actual completion of those was pretty spotty, even myself. It's hard to do stuff because you sometimes overestimate what you can do. So there's constant adjustments there. But one thing that stuck out from this class, and it kept going years after I stopped. I'm like, I can't do this anymore, guys. I got to have my Saturday mornings back, which is ironic because we're recording on a Saturday. But they said they love the ability to name their bad guys something creative. So it wasn't just I'm procrastinating. It was, the procrastinator, like capital letters, like, and so you would give it more of that villain name, and it became this personification, like, and you would be able to give it traits and like how bad of a villain is it in your life, 1 to 10. Like, we were able to like create a character around this villain, and sometimes they're really hard to beat. And you realize, okay, what is it going to take to beat this guy or thing? And I in our 2023 world, I'm a little bit miffed, Jake, that it's called bad guy. Dang it.
Patriarchy at it again.
Yes. Son of a gun. She didn't even know she probably did that. Anyways, I just want to say that out loud. So what I want to ask you is, instead of spotting 3 bad guys, so, there are ways to overcome it. You can get stronger. You can develop a new skill. You can ladderize. What I want to ask you is when take me to one of your quests. So it could be the juggling soccer example. It could be another one. What was an obstacle that got in your way? Let's name that. Like, I want to actually name a bad guy with you. So when you were playing soccer, or you're playing Madden 04, or you're doing something else, you're trying to accomplish a quest. We don't even have to go to the epic win. What was something that got in your way? And tell me about that. So what was your bad guy? What bad guy did you face?
Well, okay, let's go to the juggling thing, right? It's winter in Minnesota. You can't go outside and juggle, so you have to juggle inside the house. If your parents let you, okay, and oftentimes my parents wouldn't let me. I would just do it anyways. And then there'd be breakable items. I got a guest star here.
Yeah.
And there'd be breakable items. The breakable items were a bad guy. They were an enemy because I could not touch them. And if they got touched, I was dead man. So that would be one. Another one would be my own ego. Maybe I'd call it ego. Maybe at the same time it was driving me, it was also my bad guy, because if I didn't get it, it would frustrate me into oblivion. It would force me to have to stop working on it because I wasn't figuring out what I was trying to do as quickly as I would like.
These are 2 good ones. So, and we don't have to be super creative, because obviously we're doing this on the spot, and we're doing it for listeners' sakes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those things are perfect, because you just chose something external and you chose one thing internal. And we see some people tend to gravitate towards the external, some people do internal, and they're constantly wrestling themselves. But let's name these. So breakable items. So how can we turn that into like a bad guy? What's the person or the witty, creative name? Because the goal is, like we spotted, okay, we're not trying to break things. What we're trying to avoid, messing up essentially. But how could we rename that in SuperBetter lingo as a bad guy? What do you think? You got anything cool?
Admiral Fragile.
That is yes. Okay, so what happens when Admiral Fragile beats you?
I get grounded. I get my soccer ball taken away. I get yelled at. I get lectured how much something costs.
Okay. That is true. That's so funny. I'm like trying not to take the bait, but it's super funny to me. So I'm
in the doghouse.
I'm gonna go back and say, okay, how could we defeat this bad guy? I feel like he has an army. Like there's infantry, and then there's like bigger ones. Like if you break certain items, like you could just imagine troops all throughout the house. You shall not break.
Yeah,
the
right.
admiral. Like he's the boss.
He's just
battle.
laid a bunch of massive mines around me. I have to try and escape them.
Well, and what we would do, and I don't want to recreate. We'll just stick with this one. Although I do want to see if you can pull one off for ego. Is we would go back and say, okay, you're going to battle this bad guy. You are trying to juggle, right? You need to practice in order to get better at juggling, right? But what would KG, Chris Carter, and Michelle Akers do? She's tough as nails. I would say I would activate Chris Carter's attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you have to look a little bit his exactness. I don't think your intensity needs to go KG style, but you are loyal to your parents and you don't want to break their stuff. So in order to defeat them, you probably need to activate that strength. Like okay, what detail do I need to focus on? And that's a way to battle, and then you can overcome them. And one of the ways to overcome it is developing a new skill. And that would be the ability not to break stuff. So that's a good example.
Yeah.
Do you have any good one for the ego thing? I mean, if
not
you don't, it's
not
okay.
original. I would borrow from Wrestling World. Say Mr. Perfect. Because it's so sarcastic to me. Like that's the inner dialogue that I would have. Why frustration, right? And then the other shoulder is saying, "Oh, Mr. Perfect has to get everything right."
But that's powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the ability. Like you went really quick there, but instead of like, because what just happened, the reason why I think this is really useful, naming the thing and why it worked for people, is the direction changes. So instead of you beating you up, like all of it's coming internal and you, now it's going outward because you're blaming something else, and it's there, and you can name it, you can own it, you can do something about it. And then that conversation in your head is far different. Like those two conversations you just had were polar opposites. And then because a lot of athletes take things very personally, myself included, right? You just beat yourself to a pulp, and then you can't get over that, and then you're just done. Like I've seen it over and over again. An athlete fails once, and they're better off on the bench at that point. So, but if you say, well, it's Mr. Perfect, I can't beat him right now. Well, now as a team, I can help you with that as a coach or a teammate or whatever, or even a parent, right? Like, hey, Mr. Perfect's beating you right now. So like you can develop strategies around that. So I like it. Well played. Lastly, just a few things. Metaphor is, SuperBetter to me for enthusiasm is a language. Like that's the metaphor I want to say. Like this is just a framework that you can take and run with almost immediately. You don't need to read the book. I recommend it. Jake recommends it. The channel recommends it. But if you watch a TED Talk, you go look at the infographic, you check those links below, you're going to be fine. You could start going. The nuances in the book, it's helpful to have the exercises. But even if you just have the definitions, you could run with this. And so that's probably my most valuable idea as well. SuperBetter probably has to be one of my favorite ways to change the entire culture of enthusiasm. That's probably my takeaway. And you don't have to necessarily take her structure, but if you can do even something similar, it is night and day difference. Just compare the two things Jake just did with the bad guy. He had ego and breakable items, and he turned that into admirable, fragile. God, that's just beautiful. And Mr. Perfect. Just compare and contrast that. Like that's the difference you could have in your environment. And you can plot it out, and the creativity is there, the social bonding, and we're not even playing video games at this point. So if you can adopt this mindset, this language, and move forward, I guarantee you're going to get more enthusiasm. So that's why I'm such an advocate. I wish I had a bigger role with SuperBetter at some point. It's not in my cards right now, but I can't emphasize it enough. Do you have
I've done it before, right?
Yeah.
You talk about language, just to go off that point. We've talked about like when I coach, typically what I do is first 20 minutes, whatever, 15 minutes, they just play. Okay. And then at the end, they usually play. Just throwing in this idea of a power up, like actually saying that and saying, all right, if you guys get 3 passes, you get a power up that says the other team has to hop on 1 foot until they touch the ball. Just that language, right? I did it one time every practice after. Coach, what's the power up going to be today? Coach, what's the power? Or I would start a scrimmage with no power ups, and like they'd go for like 3 minutes, and every time someone would look at me like, Coach, can we have a power up, please? So the language connected with them, right? Just saying power up connected with them, and then I always tried to be wild and creative with it. Okay, you get 3 passes, you can pick the ball up and chuck it. I don't care. Like, but this power up, it re-engages their imagination. For me, I was wanting them to pass the ball, right? 4 passes, now you can throw the ball. So now their focus on that goal has completely changed in a way different light. So I can speak from experience here. Just using the language matters so much, and I would try to create. And when I say games, I truly mean like them playing 4-on-4 soccer to a goal, right? Each team going to a goal, and trying to make it in such a way that it mimics a Mario video game. There's power-ups, there's little mushroom people, and trying to incorporate those into that game in different ways, it does have an impact. Even on 16-year-old kids, they'll still get excited for it.
Oh, and so, one of the things as we move to friendship next month, the ability to relate between parent, athlete, coach, and in between, right? We don't have a lot of social unifiers anymore. Games are a great way to do this. Because more than likely, even if you didn't play video games and you're a dinosaur, That's my subtle dig at the elderly. Yeah, ageism coming back again. No, but serious, really, like kids like games. You like games. It's something to rib each other on. You don't have to play video games with kids. Don't get me wrong, with your athletes. But I remember Jake telling me this because we were talking at one point, and this is one of our products coming eventually here as a course on how do you design a game or games using the flow triggers and the structure of a game. It's a structure and style. And we went to, this is why I love Jake, is Jake's willing to go to battle even when it's not that we're not going to win, but it's like adverse. Like he's willing to show up with 12 athletes and a kind of semi good idea and just see how it goes. That's why I appreciate him. We did do that, by the way. I'm like, Jake, I have an idea. Like, I think this is really cool. Would you come to a practice with me just to play with some of these concepts as a coach? And we got a team that we didn't know because we didn't want to know the athletes. And it worked. It was interesting. But I remember him telling me when we were working through the flow triggers and some of this language, and he told me the exact same story you just heard about the power-ups and how easy it was. Like, Jake's a good coach. So like, he's not going to say that, but I will. But he came back and he's like, wow, I like, he was surprised. There's that bookend, how instant it was. So it's not like you need to be Jane McGonigal or Steven Kotler to take some of these concepts and instantly apply them. And your practices are they're just never the same. Mm-hmm. So I love that. So yeah, I think that would be your most valuable idea. I'm just going to take it for you. Is like, this is really low hanging fruit, you know, for enthusiasm. So, yep. All right, let's wrap this up. Jake, 3 things, 3 practical tools for enthusiasm. So one of the easiest things you can do to boost dopamine, that's from that dopamine section, and specifically the researcher Judy Willis, is make a prediction. So we love not knowing, like just what might happen. So I think that's why gambling or betting is such a big deal, is it's a prediction mechanism. So if you want to have greater engagement and play a little mini game with your athletes, just make any stinking prediction. Could be about your own game. Maybe you'll go Pete Rose style and bet on other people's games. I don't know. But make a prediction about anything. Thank you for laughing.
Put him in the Hall of Fame, doggone it.
Yeah, so he should be. I love Pete Rose. He was on my list. Do you have any predictions, like sports related, not sports related? Arizona, Minnesota? Give me a sports-ish prediction.
Chiefs don't repeat the Super Bowl champs this year. And I think it goes to the Bengals.
I would be okay with that. I if you made me pick AFC, NFC, Jake and I could just do an entire podcast on predictions for the record. That would probably be good viewing. I could see the Bengals. I'd be happy with that. Is Burrow okay? This is kind of tells you where I'm at, like intentionally. Did he got hurt, but he's okay?
He's fine. Apparently he got hurt at the white party, some fancy rich people party. That's where he got hurt at. And he just re-aggravated it. I'm sure he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Okay. I would be okay with the Bengals. I have a soft spot for the Bills. I think Buffalo, it's an underdog in me. The one team I really want to win, though, is the 49ers. I don't know why I like the 49ers. Maybe they're just a team design team I like, but I'd be good with the 49ers too, regardless of their history. All right. How about this one? One more prediction, because I know we got to wrap up. But do you think the Twins are going to make the playoffs? Minnesota is currently the worst division leading team in all of baseball as of this recording. This is August of 2023, August 5th to be exact. And they're leading by like 2 games, but they're like 2 games over 500. So, I mean, everybody else in the division's traded away. It seems like they're trying to lose, to be honest with you sometimes. And I love the Twins. I hope they're great. We've had the enduring debate whether you like Pablo Lopez versus Luis Ariz. All I care about is Pablo Lopez pitching in the playoffs. Luis Ariz can hit 400 all he wants. But if you're telling me I'm playing in the playoffs, I want the pitcher. Like, hitting is so streaky. Like, I get it. Everybody's upset because I like Luis Ariz. I love him. He's great.
Yep.
But I'm taking the pitcher. Sorry. So that's my thing. I think they will make the playoffs. I can't go so far to say they're going to get out of the first round. I would hope the pitching is healthy, and it has the potential. I can't see them getting much farther than the AL pennant. There's no way. I mean, a lot has to, like Correa and Buxton, like a lot of things have to start clicking. And there's still time because Correa and Buxton are both very streaky. Maybe they get streaky right at the end of the year. The pitching kind of settles in and they hit that perfect balance of just winning by 2 or 3 runs. And like the pieces are there, but I'm obviously shaking my head.
They are winning a very bad division. I think they'll get in because of that. I think there is something to be said for losing the most games. I think the last I heard they've lost like 18 games, but while only giving up 3 runs. So the pitching has been there. Since the break, the pitching has been worse. Joe Ryan has fallen. We don't know. He can't get the ball in the ballpark right now.
Well, he hurt his so he had a groin injury or a hamstring injury. He didn't tell anybody. It was his landing leg, so he couldn't keep the ball down, and Baldelli essentially, chastised him publicly. He's like, "Yeah, you need to tell us that stuff."
Yeah.
Okay. So
I did see he went on the IL. I didn't know about all of that, but okay. So hopefully that sorts it out once he gets healthy. I mean, the pitching is there. Like I feel like of all of the years for us to win a playoff game, this might actually be the most likely because we have the pitching, and people will argue this, but we have the type of talent that can score runs. Just with Correa, Buxton, I mean, even Joey Gallo, despite the fact that he strikes out 50% of his plate appearances, at least in the 50% that he makes contact, a decent chunk will leave the yard. So do I think that streak of winning a playoff game will end this year? No, I wouldn't bet on it that it would, but I would say of all the years, this might be our best year to actually win a playoff game.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb just because of my hatred of a certain team. Here's my prediction. The Twins are going to advance because I remember there's been teams like the Cardinals and others, even the Nationals recently, who've made runs who didn't have a great record. Sure. They got hot, they went. Okay, that's one reason. Number 2, everybody's into this viewing of our banter predictions on Twins. It's great off topic, but it's on topic. We're on predictions. Number 2 is we do have the pitching. Now, we had the Bomba squad, and they were great hitters. Well, what happened to that come October, right? So I've seen hitting teams just go off the rails. The third thing is those damn Yankees. This is my bold prediction. If the Yankees are not in the playoffs, currently it's the Rays or Orioles and the Rays. Like that division's stacked, the AL East. And then the Blue Jays. I think we were matched up with the Blue Jays in the last bracket I saw if the playoffs started now. I'm going to predict we're going just because the Yankees aren't there. Now, it would bring me so much joy if the Yankees did get in and we beat the Yankees. Like that would be ideal retribution. Mm-hmm. But I am willing to let that go just to win a series. So we're not going to win 1 series. We're going to win 2 series. There we go.
That's a bold take. I did see a headline.
Prediction.
I saw the headline the other day that was like, "Can the Yankees turn it around?" And I went, "Are they really bad or something?" So I went and looked at the standings and it's like, okay, they're last. Oh, they're still 3 games above 500. What do you mean, can they turn it around? It's not a matter whether they can turn around. It's a matter whether the 4 teams above them start losing games ever. They'd be first in the Central if they were in it.
I'm loving every moment of that. So I'm sorry, anybody on the East Coast that's a Yankees fan. It's not personal. You just kicked our butts so long that I just can't handle it. So that's a bad guy. The Yankees are a eternal bad guy for me. All right, next one, practical tool. How many hours a week is the tipping point for video gamers? So whether you are a parent, you're a former video game player, because we're at the age now where you can still play video games. And I think a lot of people our age, Jake, I'll admit to this, don't play video games anymore, despite the joy that they used to bring, because it feels childish, right? We talked about that in the Power of Fun episode, the one right before this, with Catherine Price. I still think there is value to adults our age playing video games. I don't think we should throw that completely out. Maybe you don't have as much time. I have a really hard time because I can't turn it off. So I play too much and I can't do that. Mm-hmm. But the ability to play with your kids and to have that language is really cool. So once they get to an age where they can play age appropriate games or whatever you decide is appropriate for your kids or kids in your life is a big deal. So Jake, I'm going to ask you, how many hours a week is the tipping point where it's like, that's too many? Because I have the number, but I want to hear what your guess is. It's between 0 and 40.
Thanks for that narrow window.
You're
We're talking
welcome.
we're talking about hours a week.
Hours a week, like how many hours a week? It's like that's healthy. Anything beyond that is then you should be a little bit concerned and at least watch it. This is a good number to know.
I'll say 8.
It's way more than that, but I actually kind of gave it away with the range.
Well,
20,
right, you went 40. I was like, why did he go all the way up to 40?
Yep. 21 hours a week is the tipping point.
So about 3 hours a day.
Yep, about 3. They report people who play video games 3 or fewer hours per day-ish tend to reap the benefits of play. They report having a good balance between their game pursuits and their real-world goals. I see the 3 every day a little excessive. Mm-hmm. I would say that if you're looking at it, I'm going to say a school year because we're coming up on school, a little bit more gameplay on the weekend.
Yep.
I see that as like, like that 4 or 5 hour range. Like if it's a morning, you're up at 8 and you play a couple hours and you play a couple at night. Okay, fine. But during the weekend, if you're going to school and then practice, 3 hours a day is a lot.
Yep.
But I find that number very helpful. So if you're concerned, if you want to track it a little bit, science is there. So it seems obvious, but just keep that number in mind. One more thing, Jake, I saved it to the end. Thank you for your patience, and thank you everybody for hanging in there. This has been a good episode. I'm biased, but it's good stuff. So the last thing, I teased Jake at the beginning about Tetris for slumps. So you'd have to quote me on the air. Somebody can fact check me, but back when Albert Pujols was still with the Cardinals, he had a massive home run off of Brad Lidge. And this is Astros versus Cardinals, big rivalry, 2 very good teams. And it was like his signature home run. And Pujols' home runs were beautiful. He just was a massive athlete, just consistent as can be. But the point is Tetris. So games can help reduce. There's a reduction in craving intensity to change your behavior. So if you think about something you crave, okay, and then you play a pattern matching game like Tetris for 3 minutes, it activates the same part of the brain, which we don't need to get into, and it reduces that intensity. Now it gets even better. More recently in 2015, and I'm sure this has been updated, I think Jane said that she was on Tim Ferriss's podcast because she's now at the Institute of the Future. She said this has been updated, so it's been verified. Oxford researchers published a 3rd study suggesting that the window for using Tetris, now this is the other application, you can reduce cravings. So let's just say like, ooh, I'm really in the mood for a blank dessert. Like, it's a bad guy. Like, oh, I need the dessert fiend. It can reduce blueberry. Yeah, there you go. Madame Blueberry. That was VeggieTales.
Yes, sir.
But it can reduce flashbacks. So when I say Tetris for slumps or Tetris for trauma, it can reduce flashbacks and minimize them. It could be extended to 24 hours after a trauma. The key, here's how you do it, is to reactivate the traumatic memory immediately before you play the game. So let's just say you get shelled at the end of a game. You lose the game. Like you get up there, you give up the runs, you let the goal in, whatever happens to you, that's adverse, okay? Then you have to recall that memory. This could be even literally after the game. Recall it immediately before playing. Think about it and visualize the traumatic event, and then turn promptly to the gameplay. And we're talking like 3 to 4 minutes. It's not long. I forget how long exactly, but it's, between 3 and 10 minutes. So by playing this, what it does is reduce those. It makes those, if you have an image of that event repeat in your head, this is what a lot of it is cutting that loop that you're going to play in your head and the emotion that gets behind it. So if you've ever seen, you can kind of see my screen is blurred and Jake's clear right now. It blurs it and dims it down. So like you can't ever get rid of it, but you can take down the intensity. And it doesn't have to be Tetris. It's any pattern recognition or those visually stimulating games. So you could think like Bejeweled, Candy Crush Saga. There's a game called Set. There's a lot of pattern recognition games out there now that you could do, but they're free. Yep. I think every athlete, even coach, if you have something that goes wrong, should have this in their arsenal. and just go test it. I am so fascinated by that. That was like a 10 out of 10 for me the first time I read it, of surprise, is that you could use a game to mitigate against trauma and cravings and slumps. Just unreal.
That's crazy.
Cool. All right, buddy. Anything else for the good of the cause? Anything else on games that we didn't get to that you want to add? Any final words before we do our conclusion and wrap this up?
No, not really. It was good. I thought we touched on a lot of good things, and I think we touched a lot on kind of the personal side and personal development and what games can do for the individual. And I think there's a whole nother aspect that we really just barely squeaked in there about how to utilize them in a team setting.
Yep.
But yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, let us know what you think. So in wrap up, check out Jane McGonigal's SuperBetter, whether it's through the bookshop.org link or the thrift books or wherever you prefer to get your book. Be sure to like and subscribe. We are wrapped now with enthusiasm. I'll add a mini lesson here. But go check out those other episodes. Very good stuff from here. We're going to move on to friendship, Jake, with the good life and that Harvard grant study. And we also have other books coming. So we got Wooden and Me from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and his 50-year relationship with John Wooden. We have The Teammates, which is Ted Williams and his Red Sox teammates. We have How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm going to kind of lean on you for that one. And then we also have the, and this is obviously not a preview episode, we also have the 5 love languages. Like, how can you love and serve your friends? So that'll be a good month coming up as well. Thank you for listening. Never stop learning. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.